everyone, thanks for joining me today for our longer singing exercise with your PDF. Okay, first we want to make sure that we are standing in the correct posture. So make sure that your feet are about hip width distance. Make sure you don't lock your knees or bend your knees too much. We're just standing very nice, tall, straight. Bring those shoulders back. Inhale, exhale, roll them back so that you're standing correctly. When we breathe, we want to make sure we fill our belly up with air, not our shoulders. Nothing's up in your shoulders that's going to help you breathe, right? So just breathe right into here. Beautiful. All right, we're going to start today on a hum. Right? When we hum, we want to make sure that the inside of our mouth is open. So you're going to think of it almost like a yawn. Everybody yawn. Right? You feel how open that was? Now, make that same space, but close your mouth. That's the we want to get when we're doing our humming exercise. We're going to hum a scale. We're going to do an octave, that's 8 notes, up and down. Very gentle. If it gets too high for you, then go ahead and just stop humming. We don't want to strain your voice. Each time, I'll give us the note we're going to start on. Ready? Let's go. One more. Great job. Perfect. You might notice that when you hum and you go from lower to up higher, your voice has a break somewhere in the middle, right? This is where we're going to switch from what is known in the theater world as your chest voice to your head voice. Chest voice is a little lower, right? Chest voice is usually also where people are going to belt from. Belting is when we sing really loud, like that. Your head voice, is going to be your higher voice. Somewhere in the middle, that is your break. Those might be a few notes that it's a little harder for you to sing on, or where your voice might crack a little bit. That's okay. That's totally normal for everyone. That break in your voice is called your passaggio. And really good singers can train themselves to sing in their passaggio, right in that breaking point, to exercise those few notes. But know that even really good singers sometimes have trouble singing in their passaggios. So it's totally okay if your voice cracks or breaks a few times. You might hear my voice do that a few times, and it's totally normal. Okay, for our next exercise, we're going to go back to singing on that E sound that we sang in our lesson video. But remember, we're going to bring the corners of our mouth in. E. This time we're going to be singing an arpeggio. An arpeggio has several jumps in it. So instead of singing the 8 notes of the octave, we're going to be jumping through the octave, just like this. We're also going to hold that top note just slightly longer than the rest of the notes. Just like before, I'll be giving you your starting note every time. Let's go. E, 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 nice. Great job. Okay, for our last exercise, this is a power exercise. This is to try to make our voices as powerful as possible. For this one, we're actually going to start on what is called a lip trill. Everyone try that with me. If you can't make your lips trill, it's probably because you're not taking a deep enough breath. So breathe in deep. Try again. All you have to do is take that air and breathe through your lips as they're together. Now, we're going to do this on a note. Right? So here's how it's going to go. We're going to do our lip trill. Just like that. All right? I'll give you a note we're going to start on every time. The cool thing about a lip trill is that you can actually go higher in a lip trill sometimes than you can sing. All right? So we're going to be trying to get really high in our powerful lip trill. Ready? Here we go. One more. Great job. You might feel some tingling in your nose or in your mouth region, like you need to rub that away. Go ahead, do that. It's totally normal. That's it for our singing exercise for today, but I encourage you to try this video more often or go online and find your own vocal exercise that you feel really fits your voice. See you next time.